Hi, welcome to the introductory video for political science, in particular the IRO program, which is International Relations and Organizations. My name is Matthew Longo. I'm an assistant professor in the program, and I'll be your guide for today. I'll tell you a little bit about the program, why we think it's exciting, and in particular why it might be a good fit for you. So we'll start with the most important question, and certainly probably the one that you're thinking about, which is what even is political science? And the answer maybe is a bit surprising, but the truth is political science in a way can be anything, right? So take for example, you're watching television and you're watching Game of Thrones. Sure, it's a story about dragons, there's action, there's love affairs, there's all the sorts of things happening. But you might also wonder if it's about politics, if it's about empire, for example, heredity. Same might happen when you're watching the news or scrolling through Twitter on your phone, right? You might really learn about hashtag Black Lives Matter or hashtag Me Too and wonder, okay, I know this social phenomenon in my life, I know what they mean by this idea, but actually maybe it taps into something bigger about, for example, social movements, about how societies affect change. Our point is that actually all of these things are political science. What makes our program special is actually the science part, which is that in addition to teaching politics courses, for example, about empire or social movements, we also teach science. You'll take statistics. So what we mean by that, in particular, is that you'll learn, for example, how to read polls. Think if you've ever, scrolled on the news and saw a poll and wondered, do I really understand what it's saying? Can I read the error bars, for example? Maybe I wonder about what's deeper than just the reported results. You want to actually understand how they got them. That's what our program's there to do. It's trying to connect what might interest you naturally about politics with these other kinds of particularly scientific methods to make your own study more rigorous. So, in addition, we have a focus. Now, here I want to be also a little bit careful, but to explain to you what this focus is and why it might be interesting to you. In principle, our focus is European and global. By European, that might mean something formal, right? It might be, for example, the operation of the EU. It might also mean something like social movements, right? So what are the Black Lives Matter protestings? What does it mean for European politics? But we're also global. We look at international formal institutions like the UN, but also questions that are global in nature that are informal, like, for example, the kind of movements we just talked about on Twitter. What is important to me for this moment in explaining to you is that actually, again, in a way, we do everything. We teach the European and we teach the international, but you should wonder in your mind, how do you even know when something becomes international? So an example I like to give of this is to think, so I'm an American. My former president, unfortunately, was Donald Trump. Everyone watching this video knows this person's name, and you probably correctly think he's a global figure. Okay. But when did he become a global figure? Obviously, when he was president, he was already global, right? But also when he was a candidate. Might the same not have been true when he was doing his banking deals in Russia? In fact, the farther you chisel down, you find out that almost all international phenomena start out as national phenomena and vice versa. So really in teaching the one, you can't but teach the other. So our focus is European International, but really we teach political science. And we hope you'll come out with a strong understanding of all the different features of what that might entail. So, obviously, we do not teach in the abstract. We are not teaching somewhere out in the ether. We teach in a particular place. That particular place is Leiden University, and we think that's a huge selling point of our program. Not only is it a great university, it's very well ranked and so forth, but it has such an incredibly diverse student body and teaching body. Obviously, I come from abroad. About half of our program's teachers come from different places, frankly from around the world, although the focus is mostly European. And same is said about the students. Students come from literally every corner of the world. And so in addition to being an excellent university and an excellent program, we think it's a really interesting space to be part of. And I can say, personally from my experience, that's hugely true. Beyond that, we're located in a city, which is The Hague, one of the absolutely most global cities in the world and one of the capitals of international politics. It is so lucky, frankly lucky, to be a student in this kind of setting, where you get to also study next to top-level politicians and institutions of politics, making politics right outside your door. Okay, I know what you're thinking. All this fanciful talk about dragons and Twitter and whatever, sure, politics is interesting, but what am I actually going to do? What am I going to study? We actually think one of the best parts of our program is the structure itself. So what do we mean by this? So it's a 3-year program. In the first year, we have what are called foundations. This is the discipline, the literature, the basic ideas. What is political science? What is international relations? What does it mean to study politics with the kind of gaze that we give you, right? How do you think like a political scientist? These are big lectures. There's going to be exams. And it's really going to get you up to speed with the broad strokes of the discipline. But after this, there's a second year. And in the second year, we start to change a little bit. In the second year, you get towards more in-depth classes. So maybe you're no longer interested just in, what is international relations. You want to focus in on something like international law and human rights. For my part, I teach a course in the second year on political philosophy. So maybe you're thinking, what even is a political philosophy course doing in an IRO program? But actually, this is part of the message I'm trying to communicate, which is that we think quite broadly about politics. And if you think about it, almost everything you've ever thought about politics, particular policies, always have a philosophy dimension. So for example, you might be thinking about whether a policy is just or who is harmed by it. Often we talk about language like equality. It's good for a policy to care for equality, but what even is equality? In my own research, I work on the question of borders and migration. And that might sound quite far from philosophy, but actually a lot of the work I do is interviewing border guards and asking about their moral decision making. So it all ties together, but the main point is that in the second year we start to go in depth into subjects. But the third year is where a program like ours really shines. Because in the third year it gets really narrow. Not just a slow deepening of knowledge, but in particular something that interests you. So you take your courses, let's say in the end you really care about something like international law and human rights. Maybe you want to write your thesis about human rights in China, or human rights in Turkey, or human rights in the abstract. How do you even apply ideas like human rights on the ground? For this, you might want to write your thesis, which is going to be a work produced by you in a very small room in conjunction with a professor. It's an intimate setting, and really it's the most interesting part of our program, because ultimately, while everyone starts in the same place, you're all going to end up somewhere different. You're all going to write on things that are ultimately your ideas with your research that's going to build on all of that training you received before. In particular, there's 2 kinds of settings we're going to give you. And I think this is kind of the nice bit, and so we'd like to show you an image of it. We're quite proud of the building here, it's quite beautiful. But you should have an idea of what it means to, for example, be in a lecture room. So one of these images is a big lecture room. They are big. You are seated with all of your colleagues and friends talking about big ideas. Next to it is a picture of a much smaller room. The smaller room is a seminar. And you'll notice it's a hugely different kind of education. Here now, it's not exactly absorbing information the way you might in a lecture room, but really debating it, really getting into the ideas and working one-on-one with teachers, but also in very small settings with your fellow classmates. We think part of the reason our program is so great is because we have both of these kinds of spaces. And really we think that the best education is one that combines both. Okay, I lied. I suggested that the most important question facing you and what's on your mind is, what even is politics? It's probably not true. What you're actually thinking about is what happens next. And we're here to say that for whatever you choose to do, we think our program, or a program like ours, really can help you get there. I've been teaching for a few years. I know lots of people that have gone directly into international organizations or international politics. As I mentioned, The Hague is one of the best places on earth to study such a thing. The bridge is direct. Many people go back to their home countries to pursue politics. Others go into consulting or banking. Others become journalists or academics. I can say from my own students, and some that I'm still in touch with, one of my former students is now working on a documentary. There's lots of options. One of the nice things about being in politics, a broad subject and an important subject, is there's lots of job opportunities. But some of you will actually rather pursue scholarship and decide to stay working in academia. Maybe you just think our classes are so cool. You want more of us. And you think, wouldn't it be great if I could do this again? So we offer at Leiden, conveniently, in our faculty in political science, lots of master's options. Maybe you want to go into further depth, for example, into questions about parties So we have a track called Democracy and Representation. Maybe instead you're interested in the kind of thing I was discussing earlier that I work on, and you really care about something like human rights and care about learning more about what justice means. There's all the different kinds of subjects available to you. We have 6 different specializations, but the bottom line is if you like the program, we set you up perfectly. It's a seamless transition to take an extra year and go really into depth. The 3rd year is when you start to find your voice as a student. It's when you start to really write your own argument. That's the 3rd year in the bachelor's program. But the master's program, which is essentially a 4th year, is when you really take that home and you really start to use that original argument to contribute to the discipline and make something bigger of it. And we're really proud of both these programs. We think of them as interlocking pairs. So if you decide to go get a job, that's the best. The world's open to you. But you should also know you can stay in a master's program like ours. So you're wondering also about your fit. You wonder whether or not this is a program you see yourself in. Obviously, we would love you to come, but we also want you to be happy in it. We want you to think that this is right for you. And part of our message is that politics is important for everyone. So maybe you're actually concerned about when I said we have a scientific gaze. I understand that feeling. You think, I don't want to study statistics, or I'm scared of statistics. We don't think you should feel that way. We teach you as though, you start from nothing as a beginner. But the truth is, I don't like statistics either. There are also opportunities to work with people like me in the program who are more humanistic in our field of study. The point is, the teachers come from everywhere with all different perspectives. So do our students. So, like I mentioned earlier, maybe you just find Game of Thrones riveting television and want to know why. Or maybe you're an activist and see strikes for climate and think, not only do I want to be part of those, right? I want to understand why they work or when they work. All those different things might be you. And because of that, the main message we have is it's certainly worth giving a try. You shouldn't shut yourself out of what could be an amazing program if either you think politics isn't your main thing or if science isn't your thing. Because the truth is we think they're both so important and can frankly fit anyone. Now the technical stuff, which I should say up front, because I teach in the program, I'm actually not as proficient in. The true thing is if you really want the details, you should go online. We have all this material available to you, but I can treat a couple things just for you here now. So the first is you're wondering, how do you get into such a program? Obviously, we think we're really awesome, so we think you should want to fulfill our entry requirements, but we of course have them. You have to have a diploma from high school. You have to be able to show English proficiency. You have to have done at least some math in high school. There's exact requirements here available online. Those are the broad brush. In addition, there are deadlines. Of course there are. Any kind of system is going to have details. I'm not going to run through the whole slide. What I'm going to say is the most important date to keep in your mind is January 15th is the application deadline. Everything is in by that date. Write it in your calendars. Keep it in mind. Obviously, we would love you to apply, but the worst reason not to apply is because you missed the deadline, as opposed to decided the program wasn't for you, for example. Make the deadline January 15th. The rest should be fairly straightforward and is available on the website. Okay, I know what you're thinking. There's nothing more annoying than being told to just go look online for information. But we're not like that. Actually, we have lots of opportunities. It's not just me talking to you now on a video. We have open days and experience days. We have a chance to actually sit in on classes, to be a student for a day, to meet students, to email, to chat with them, to get a sense of what it's really like to be one. Because we think it's so important, this issue of fit. We want you to know that it's not just that our program is great, but that it's great for you. And the more direct contact you have, the more open days and experience day kind of experiences you have, the better it is and the more likely you're going to feel that it's right for you. Of course, for the real nuts and bolts, the real dates, the best is the actual website. That's here as well. I hope this was informative. This is the end of our video. Again, my name is Matthew Longo, and we really hope to see you in The Hague.